In Ukraine, the death toll from a Russian missile strike on an apartment building is expected to rise past 40 today. Rescue workers in Dnipro are still searching for 29 people in the rubble, but chances of finding survivors are slim. Ukraine's president is calling for faster deliveries of heavy weapons from the West in the wake of the attack, which he describes as a war crime.
Another body recovered from the rubble. Rescuers say they have little hope of finding anyone alive under this mess of twisted concrete. But they keep up the search anyway.
We are not giving up hope of finding anyone alive. The first group is looking for the dead. We will help with that too.
Those who were rescued were rushed to hospital.
There are 3 people on the ward, including the 19-year-old woman. They were admitted with wounds after the explosion. 2 are in our ward with relatively severe conditions, barotrauma and head trauma.
Across the road from the apartment block, neighbours and relatives pay their respects to the dead and try to process their grief.
It could have been any of us in that place. People. Children.
This is a community reeling from profound loss. In all of that, one story of hope. This man's elderly mother was rescued from the building unharmed. Then he found his cat, a small comfort in a time of tragedy.
Russia claims it had nothing to do with the strike on the Dnipro apartment block, instead blaming Ukrainian air defence systems. So we asked defence analyst Marina Miron from King's College London for her take on that claim.
Well, it's quite difficult to judge who is actually responsible. We know that Russia has launched a barrage of missiles, and we also know that Ukrainian air defense systems have shot some missiles down. So right now, because it happened so recently, there should be an independent investigation to find out what actually happened, because obviously the Russian side, even if it's Russia's fault, will try to deny this, while the Ukrainian side will try to point fingers at Russia, because, as you said, this would be a war crime. And as a matter of fact, this battle is going on in the information sphere, kind of both sides trying to point finger at one another. For instance, the Ukrainian presidential advisor, Alexei Arestovich, first said that it was a Ukrainian missile that basically hits a Russian missile, and that's why it happened, and he retracted his statement. So there is a lot of confusion going on, but right now it's really impossible to tell who is at fault there.
Our correspondent Sonia Falnica joins us now from Kiev. Sonia, what's the latest?
Well, the search and rescue operation has continued overnight in that south-central city of Dnipro. There are several people unaccounted for, but of course, as we saw in your report, hopes are fading of finding survivors under the rubble after, 3 nights in sub-zero temperatures. And of course, the death toll is rising by the hour, dozens of people in hospital, including children. We've also seen a huge outpouring of help from villages in and around Dnipro. There have been reports here in the media of, municipalities willing to take in the hundreds of people who have now become homeless. There are also reports that some of the residents affected are internally displaced people, people who have fled from regions like Kherson and Kharkiv and have moved to Dnipro. And I think for them, this experience is especially traumatic, losing everything all over again. And Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister, Anna Maliar, has said that the missile that hit that building is a Russian X-22 ballistic missile. Right after that attack, we saw a statement from Ukraine's air defense forces saying they do not have the means, the equipment to detect or shoot down these types of missiles. So that has raised a lot of concern here and strengthened calls for the rollout of advanced air defense systems like the Patriot from the US.
Sonia, you ventured out in the dark in the capital, Kiev, where city authorities have restricted public lighting with serious consequences for people out on the streets. Let's have a look at your report.
During the day, despite the war, the Ukrainian capital can look and feel quite normal. But as night falls, Kiev slips into almost darkness. Street lights are off, and at many crossings, traffic lights as well. The dark makes it downright risky for those on the streets. Bogdan works for a food delivery service in Kiev, taking orders to customers around the city. Curfew isn't until 11 p.m., so much of his work is in the inky dark.
Work has become much tougher because of the lack of light. It's hard to ride in the dark, and if a person doesn't have reflectors, I just can't see them. You have to be careful because there could be people on the streets, kids, and there are potholes and open drains which you could fall into.
A month ago, Bogdan had an accident when he hit a curb in the dark. He smashed all the reflectors on his bicycle. The streets in the Ukrainian capital are clearly not safe at night, and that's especially so for those navigating the city on foot. Now, the deputy head of Kiev's traffic police told me that car accidents involving pedestrians have gone up by a whopping 80% since last October. That's when the city was forced to introduce rolling blackouts in response to Russia's debilitating missile and drone attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Everyone here has a story about the dark.
It's really dangerous. I'm wondering how I can cross the road to the other side. Shall I go further and look for a proper crossing, or should I follow another person so we're in a group?
I bought a glow stick collar for my dog because I can't see him when there's no light in the park. It's very convenient. It was dark at the crossing. 4 people approached me, punched me in the nose and snatched my phones from my pocket.
But living in a city shrouded in darkness can also have its upsides.
There's a bit of intrigue and mystery in the air, especially when it's closer to the curfew and there's no one around. It's quite interesting to ride along dark, empty streets.
And quite literally disappear into the night.
And Sonia is still with us. Sonia, what are the biggest problems for the city?
Well, as we saw in that report, the police here say that the biggest problem is really car drivers being unable to see pedestrians and really knocking them over. We've had reports of people with serious trauma injuries, head injuries, but also fatalities. And the police here have started a campaign now to try and encourage people to, wear brighter jackets and coats rather than black clothes that, where the car drivers could actually see them. They've asked them to wear, reflective elements. I've spoken to parents in the city who are quite worried about their children going out alone in the dark to the park. They kit them out in reflective clothing. And police have also said that one of the bigger problems is that in districts where there are frequent power outages, the traffic lights don't function. So officers are now being trained to kind of manually, regulate these crossings at big junctions. The other problem a little bit is crime. Now, incidents of looting and theft have gone up in certain districts, with some criminals taking advantage of the dark. But the police say, overall crime is down since Kiev was forced to introduce these blackouts last October.
DW's Sonia Falnikar in Kiev there. Thank you.